I want to talk about how it can actually do the opposite. How it can help the population in general, help us, help more people than you think. So, and I think, we talk, everything today is about blockchain, but this is really more about how we can do something. Blockchain just happens to be a technology the same way the internet is a technology, and IoT is a technology, and Java is a language, right? It's just a thing. We're the ones that make a difference in how we apply these things. And we decided to pick well-being and expansion of our economy are the things that I wanted to talk about today because I think it's top of mind, especially for your generation. You're the generation that is going to live through these future economies and in many ways shape them. So, as we talk about blockchain in general, I want to cover 3 areas I think are important. The first is digital sovereignty, the second is digital proof, and the third is VBSC, or value-based smart contracts.
What are we doing?
So I guess start with, let's define what we mean by well-being. Best place to start is Google, right? So really Google, and what Google tells you about well-being is it's really a state of being comfortable, a state of being healthy, right? A state of happiness, of security, of safety, of financial prosperity. That's well-being. It's a lot of different things. It has a lot of facets. That said, here in the United States, despite how much we spend on well-being, like healthcare, we don't do so well in comparison to that spend when you line it up against other countries, particularly those in the OECD. So in healthcare, we are the #1 spender, investor, whatever you want to call it, right? We're 28th in life expectancy. Seems like a disconnect, right? We're 4th in education spend, but we're 20th in reading literacy. Where's the disconnect? We are #1 in charity. We are the world's most charitable, from a financial standpoint, country on the planet, right? Far beyond where everybody else spends. But we are ranked 4th in poverty. That's a number I think a lot of people don't realize. Among 33 OECD nations, we're 4th worst. How is it? How is it we have this massive disconnect, right? And I think a lot of times when people think about poverty, they think about the folks who are homeless or in the street asking for money or trying to, recently got kicked out of their home or whatever it might be because they couldn't pay their mortgage. It's more than that. There's a lot of working poor in this country. And again, I mentioned before, to some degree, technology has been a cause of that. If you look at, and this is a graph which depicts really 4 key trends over the course of about 4 years. One is labor productivity, one is real GDP, or the actual gross domestic product, another one is private employment, and the last one is median family income. Now there was this point, back around mid-80s, when up till then, these things were all sort of tracking together. So they're all kind of going together, right? As we innovated more and brought new technology to bear, we got better and better in our GDP, people made more money, it was great. But right around 1985, technology took over. Not in a bad way, not necessarily a good way, I don't be neutral about this, it just did, right? And that was the beginning of robotics. And the inexpensive nature of the microprocessor, Moore's Law, right? And that's when things really started to divert, where we had labor productivity begin to go through the roof, because now we could do so much more with so fewer people. And we had median income actually begin to decline. This bifurcation is a scary thing, because in some degree, it represents the erosion of the middle class. And how many folks in here, I know myself, how many folks would you consider your family grown up middle class? Raise your hands. So a good number, right? That's pretty scary that continues to erode. Well-being, we also know, is about safety. And we talked a lot about this today. Privacy is safety, right? if you feel as though you're being spied on or your information is not being used in your best interests, that threatens your safety. So it's a kind of a big deal. And what's also interesting is that this was just last year's stat. About 30% of U.S. consumers, that's a lot of people, right, were notified that, oops, it looks like some of your private data might have been stolen. We're looking into it. We're trying to figure it out. We see headlines like this every single day, right? It's a big problem. So again, this threatens well-being. So one of the things I want to talk about that blockchain does really well, at least has the potential to do really well, is this concept of digital sovereignty. The concept that you are in control. So you can decide who and when data is shared. Whether that is sharing data with your employer, or sharing data with a merchant, or sharing some data with Facebook, or some social network, or even sharing data at the bar. Right? So if you look at, and the other thing I think is really important to know about digital sovereignty, it isn't just about deciding who you want to share data with, it's when you want to turn it off. When you want to flip that switch and say, that person or that entity no longer needs that information, or they only need it for this particular purpose. That's strength. Now, let me use another example, and I think this is important. In addition to being able to say, all right, I only want these individuals to see my data. Sometimes you also want to make sure that they only see the data that they need. We have this TMI issue going on right now. Too much information, right? And so, I think everybody in the room has one of these. Some of you might have two, and one not the weekends. But what's interesting is when you go to a bar and there's a bouncer and they ask you, hey, I want to make sure you're old enough, right? You have to give them this ID, right? And on that ID's got a lot of information. It's got a whole bunch of stuff like your address and whether or not you're an organ donor. Who cares? Right? You're trying to buy a beer, right? You're trying to get a bar. It tells you your full birth date, which, by the way, can be used to steal your identity. Your home address, think about that. That's kind of scary, right? You don't know who you're giving this thing to. You're telling some stranger where you live, right? Well, in essence, all you really need to do, all they really need, is to know that you're old enough to consume alcohol in the state of Ohio. They don't need to know that you're 21 in a day, 23, 55. They just need to know that you're over 21. That's the only fact that they need to know. And that is what we call zero knowledge proof, or ZKP. Essentially, and this is something that's going to become more and more important. If you look at all these data breaches that do occur, a lot of times it's on data that you had to give up that really they never needed to see anyways. Right? And so ZKP is something that's really important for security and well-being for that matter. And that's why blockchain is pretty good at this, because blockchain does two things really well. The first is key encryption. The idea that I could actually say, okay, I am who I am, I am who I say I am, and I'm only going to give that information to individuals for a period of time for a particular purpose. And when those individuals get that data, they're going to know that it could have been tampered with. They'll be able to see its provenance through the years and know that this is an actual truth. So, on to digital proof. Trust but verify. When we think about digital proof, there's this thing about assertions. I mean, everything throughout history is based on assertion. Every human relationship, every business agreement is about some type of one individual saying one thing and another confirming it. That could be about an ID, as just described just now. It could be about a credential, if you're a physician, for instance, or an airplane pilot. It could be about an assertion about whether or not a product was delivered, an assertion about whether or not a service was rendered, or what quality or outcome that service produced. It could be about a part, and to what degree that part is genuine. It could be about an ingredient in a drug, that the ingredient was actually mixed in the mixture level that is necessary and safe. It could be about expense, it could be about loss. There's lots of assertions every day in the media, right? Real news, fake news, foreign invasions, best words. Everyone's always saying some kind of assertion, right? But the reality is assertion is really nothing unless somebody else or some entity proves that to be true. That proof of verification can come from a lot of different places, and sometimes they're somewhat complex. They have to come from more than just one individual. You have some proofs that, for instance, may be permanent, like where you will graduate from college at some point. Short of going back in time in a silver DeLorean and changing time, once you graduate here, there's no reason to ever doubt the fact that it's been validated by the registrar's office. And if you can post that on a blockchain, you should be able to use that digital asset that you belong, that belongs to you, your digital sovereignty, at any given time prove that you're a graduate of Miami University. One of the problems, again, today in the analog world, in the manual world, is the dilemma that without digital proof, organizations are constantly asking for just a boatload of information they don't need. And many of them are doing the exact same thing. When you apply for a job someday, or if you're a physician applying for a position somewhere, someone's going to call that medical school or this college or whatever, and they're going to verify that you actually went here. And the other job that you applied for, somebody else is going to call the school and say, hey, they go to school here, and so on, and so on, and so on. That is incredibly inefficient. It costs a lot of money. In healthcare, it takes an average of 90 to 120 days to credential a physician. That is a long time. And if you look at healthcare and the limitations and the challenges it has with just not enough people going into healthcare, we don't need to make it any harder to verify who you are, particularly if we can nail it on a blockchain. So if you look at digital proof, there's a lot of things you can do in a lot of different industries. Is virtually every single industry needs digital proof in some way. They all handle assertions in one way today. In many cases, what they're doing is they're manually, in the analog world, verifying that assertion. I mentioned healthcare for a second ago, but another area within healthcare that's growing is the idea of performance-based, and I'll talk about this in a moment, but performance-based or outcome-based, value-based care, right? You don't want to just know that that care was rendered. You want to know whether or not that care is actually making you a healthier person. Maybe that's what we should be paying for. In financial services, the concept called KYC, or Know Your Customer, is up to about a $20 billion cost for that industry to constantly verify that a customer is applying for a loan, or a corporation that's applying for a certain type of account or brokerage has that right to do so, right? They're running around looking for documents all over the place, and it's costing an enormous amount of money. In government and philanthropy, one of the biggest challenges there is knowing the element that an individual you're going to provide a service to, whether it's a health and human service, or it's some type of some kind of tax benefit or whatever it might be, verifying that that entity actually is eligible for that service at that given time requires an enormous amount of documentation people have to track down all over the place. Why do it over and over again? This is an opportunity for blockchain. And in manufacturing, food production, and pharmacy, we talked about this earlier, the supply chain, how important it is, knowing where a product came from, knowing how that assertion and that truth work through the system is incredibly important. So again, blockchain is a really good fit for this. Last component I want to talk about as it relates to the benefit of blockchain is VBSC, or value-based smart contracts. When you think about value-based smart contracts, I want to think in the context of charities. This is one of my favorite topics, right? Nonprofits today, just in general, there are 1.5 million nonprofits today in the U.S. That is a lot, right? The challenge with nonprofits today and many charities is some sort of daunting statistics. And one of them is that in many cases, and especially among millennials, people are beginning to not trust them as much as they used to. Part of that has to do with, sometimes it's fair negative press, sometimes it's unfair negative press, but probably one of the biggest issues is transparency. This lack of transparency, right? Where, yeah, you know that this organization takes in a lot of money that you donate to, but you really can't trace where that benefit went to, what individual benefited from it, and when they benefited from it, what impact did it have on the rest of the community? All right, so this is a major issue. It's a major issue for charities that are doing a great job, and they can prove it, except they don't have a means to do it, an easy way to be able to show that. And so that's where blockchain comes in, because blockchain creates an opportunity to, within smart contracts, be able to not only show that information, but also demand that certain things occur before payment is doled out. So in this case, the program achieves blank and saves blank and then blank. Let's use an example. I don't know if anybody saw the news today. I saw this headline coming in. It was about Amazon. And Amazon just, they just posted some of their numbers, and it looks like for 2018, they will pay 0 income tax, what the article said, right? What's interesting, and follow along with me right now, is what Amazon's income, actually reported income was. This would be the gross. It, 1, 1, comma, 2, 0, 0, comma, 0, 0, 0, comma, 0, 0, 0. X down 0, 0, right? Big, big number. Now, I'm not going to get into a debate on whether or not they should be paying more income tax or less income tax. The article will go on. I recommend you see it. They're getting a lot of benefits out of new stimulus, tax credits for creating jobs. They're doing a lot of great things. Don't get me wrong. But as you read on the article, you see a lot of frustration about, well, it's kind of not completely clear how all this worked out, right? The tax law is complicated. Well, that kind of lack of transparency creates a really big problem, right? It creates political discord, it creates frustration, and this is where blockchain can make a substantive difference. Being able to not only make that information available to those that have a right to see it, namely the American taxpayer, but also a structure, a harness that ensures that it is being laid out in an equitable fashion. So again, a great example of why blockchain and value-based smart contracts work. And when you combine them with an immutable ledger, you have a digital proof that can make the entire discussion about how we fund programs, whether it's on the private philanthropic side, where the money goes, or as tax abatements and where that money goes, and whether it's really truly earned, it creates a model that allows us to operate in a lot more civil way. So I'll end with, how do I get involved, or how do you get involved, right? The good news is there are a lot of resources, this being one of them. This is great to see this in play, right? We're doing a lot of things up in Cleveland with Blockman, but it's great to see the universities now get behind blockchain, and just, if anything, get the word out and begin to educate and provide information on where people can learn more. There are a lot of resources. I mentioned Blockland, but also Consensus has got a lot of information on their site. Hyperledger, we've been talking about that for a good amount of time today. Hyperledger is actually part of the Linux Foundation, includes a number of projects. Fabric is one, which has gained a lot of momentum. There's device-specific project as well. Intel has its. YouTube, believe it or not, there is a ton of information on YouTube that takes you from the very generic to the very specific in training on how to use some of this technology. Blockgates is another one. They've got a lot of online courses. Some are free, some are not, but still nonetheless. Talk about Amazon, AWS. It's a great way if you want to bring up a network quickly and relatively inexpensively. You can use AWS for that. In fact, AWS now has I know that they have it for Ethereum or Hyperledger. I think they have Ethereum as well, where you can go on and they will literally, you turn some knobs, flip some switches, and it literally creates a private blockchain for you in your own little sandbox that you can play with and learn from. So there's a lot of great resources out there. I think, you know, a lot of times people ask me, well, how do I get into this? Like, if I'm not, you know, if I'm technical, or maybe I do, maybe if you do have some software background, what do I want to focus on? Well, the good news, bad news is it's not any one technology, so it depends on what you're working in and the blockchain stack that you choose. But JavaScript and Solidity are two on the Ethereum side that are very important to know. Java and Go, both on the just on a programming standpoint, but also with Hyperledger is important, C++, Python. So the good news is, if you are a CS student and you're getting some of this background, odds are that picking up blockchain is not going to be that hard. And if you're completely new to it, just pick one of these and you'll find a flavor of blockchain that supports it pretty well. So I'll end with, and I think again, this is the call out towards really your generation and why you can have such a substantive, important, meaningful impact on well-being. You have the ability to reshape an economy. An economy has kind of gone off the rails a little bit, as I showed that bifurcation, right, of GDP and productivity and household income. There are things we can use blockchain for to begin to change that direction, change that trajectory. But whatever you wind up doing, just do it because, right? Do it because, and I think the operative word always in the word because is cause. Find a cause, follow it, and you're all really smart. You're here. You wouldn't have got to the school if you weren't smart, and you wouldn't have been committed if you had not come to this today. So just consider the world. They need you, and blockchain and other technologies around it can have a big impact. And zero waste. Thanks.